could be substantial. Not only is there a whole marketing effort necessary to rebrand, but relocation could actually result in some loss of signal coverage. You might have a different propagation dynamic for one channel as compared to another. And so if there's a loss of eyeballs, the broadcasters would say that should be compensated. If there are costs associated otherwise with the relocation, those should be compensated. So you can imagine where I'm going. In the end, the right result is full compensation for any repacking that might be required. And that could also be accommodated by the auction revenues themselves. The revenues could be put to the purpose of incentive auctions and then whatever repacking might be required at the same time. Related to this matter is what we're going to do about public safety and the need for a fully interoperable national communications network for first responders. Last year, we advanced legislation in our committee that would auction the so-called D block. And the D block is a slice of that 700 megahertz spectrum that was vacated by the broadcasters with the DTV transition and today still lies fallow. Our goal with auctioning that would be to use auction proceeds in part to build out the public safety network, buy the equipment necessary for the first responders to be able to communicate fully across the entire nation. And that build-out cost is estimated to be about $10 billion. There are parts of the country, in rural areas in particular, where the public safety community simply doesn't have the resources to finance this build-out. Local governments are strapped. They probably, in many parts of the country, could contribute nothing to that build-out cost. And so if you're really going to have a fully national interoperable network, the federal government's going to have to provide some funds in order to enable that build-out to take place. So where's that money going to come from? Our legislation last year would have applied auction proceeds from the D block to that build-out cost, and then to the extent that more money was needed, we would have authorized general fund appropriations up to about $10 billion for that purpose. The administration has just released a proposal that ties incentive auctions to the public safety network challenge, and basically says, give the D block to public safety. They already have a full allocation of spectrum in the minds of many. I happen to think that. But the administration says, give them the D block in addition to what they already hold. And then apply auction proceeds from the incentive auctions we've just discussed in order to build out with equipment the public safety network nationwide. And so since that comes from the administration, it will be one of the foundation arguments that will be considered as the debate over public safety goes forward. I'm going to mention a third issue, and I'll do this very briefly. I think you can look for debate this year about what will be known as CALEA 2. In the mid-1990s, before the internet was widely used, Congress passed something called the the Communications Assistance to Law Enforcement Act, otherwise known as CALEA. It required that telephone companies provide in their equipment a ready means for wiretaps to be applied when law enforcement got a wiretap order from a court. But of course, by its terms, it applied to phone companies, which were then essentially the means for electronic communications. By its terms, CALEA did not apply to the current range of internet services that promote communications, things like Skype, BlackBerry, Twitter, Facebook, Gmail. None of these is subject to CALEA. So not surprisingly, that now the internet being a major means by which telecommunications occurs and these software-driven services being the enabling factor for that, law enforcement would like to have a CALEA 2 And that second CALEA would simply say that the provisions of the original CALEA, meaning that you have to make available the ability to apply wiretaps when ordered by a court, would also apply to these internet-based software services. The arguments of law enforcement for that are obvious. The arguments in opposition are that these mandates for windows into internet-based communications could hamper innovation, could possibly create vulnerabilities when terrorists or others are able to access these communications, and could hamper the competitiveness of U.S. companies marketing their services abroad where they're in competition with services where these mandates are not contained. So look for that to be a lively debate. A hearing was recently held in the House Judiciary Committee that teased the issue up, and you can expect further proceedings on that during the course of this year. Let me say thank you. I appreciate your inviting me to be here today. Tom, thanks for the invitation, and I hope that you have a very successful conference.